All right, hi once again, everybody. Welcome to Believe in Bills. Adam Benini, WGRZ TV, Sal Majorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. And our guest is a gentleman that many Bills fans will know well, remember fondly. A guy who we covered, Sal, you and I, through the years during his time in Buffalo. Former offensive lineman Jerry Ostroski. Jerry, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying myself down here in balmy Tulsa. It's kind of like living inside of a volcano, but it's okay, man. We're doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great.
Yeah,
And so is Sal.
we are living the life, Jerry.
Well,
Living the life.
I still get back up to Buffalo at least once a year. I try to. This year I'll get up there a couple times. So myself and John Fina were kicking around the idea of buying a place and having an Airbnb, and then when we need a place to get out of the heat, because obviously he's in Tucson, we can go up to Buffalo and hang out.
Fina was in town the other night. He was the legend of the Bill. It was funny. I take a walk. Now I'm on this health kick now, Jerry, now that I'm 60, almost 62. So before every game, I get there early. I walk around the entire perimeter of the property.
Right.
So I'm walking. I didn't even know Fina was supposed to be doing that. And all of a sudden, here comes Fina walking by. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing here? And then I go in and I asked one of the guys, like, oh, yeah, he's doing the Legends today. So that was pretty funny. I just happened to bump into him while he was walking outside.
No, I was really happy for John. That meant a lot to John. It was a big deal for him, a big deal for myself and our group as well. But, John kind of, he was kind of in that transition phase of the Tom Donahos and Williams and that group. And I don't think he got his just dues. And I was glad they were able to bring him back and, honor him like that.
Yeah, he did a great job. He did a great job with that. All right, so and you're doing plenty of media work right now, Jerry. And I always suspected that when we were covering you as a player, just your personality,
right, everything
you brought to the table. It doesn't surprise me that you wound up on the media side of things and that you're doing very well at it. In part with here with the Believe Network, which we'll talk more about that at the end of the show here. But let's get to Bills Ravens Sunday Night Football. Buffalo 3-0. And I guess I'll ask kind of an open-ended question. And as a former player, your opinion, how good is this Bills team?
This Bills team is exceptional. Now, it does have its weaknesses. Obviously, I think it's going to get challenged this Sunday night. I think obviously there's a weakness a little bit up the middle of that defense. There's not a tremendous amount of big, just monstrous size on the defense. The thing they do is they fly to the football. This group runs as good as any defense I've seen in Buffalo, but they do lack a little size up the middle. And you're facing a team like the Baltimore Ravens that can, they can get and spread and do those types of things and run college concepts with Lamar Jackson and then come back and put a 300-pound former defensive tackle at fullback, a couple of tight ends, and run power with Derrick Henry. So they're definitely going to be challenged in that aspect. But I think the biggest thing, and I mentioned that college kind of theory as far as offense goes with Baltimore, I think that's what we're seeing with this Bills team. I think Joe Brady's done a wonderful job just really utilizing Josh Allen's strengths and not forcing him to do things that he doesn't like to do or isn't comfortable in doing. And by doing that, I mean, this offense is very, very prolific, tons of motion, tons of deception. And they also have a lot of speed on that side of the ball as well. So, yeah, I think this is a really, really good group. If this defense can continue to hold up, they've got a really good chance.
Why don't we start on the defensive side, Jerry, because I think that's you mentioned it. Baltimore's ability to run the ball, I think, is really probably the biggest aspect of this game. And then they can dominate a game on the ground. And then you've got Lamar, who can do so many great things, out of structure. So you look at what the Bills have done in the past against Lamar. They've actually handled him pretty well. It's surprising when you look at the numbers. He has not killed them in any way in the 3 games they've played, and Buffalo won 2 of those games, including the playoff game. But their running game has always been a problem. And now you add Derrick Henry, who Derrick Henry has killed the Bills. That guy has literally killed the Bills when he played for Tennessee 5 times. So what do you see as the key to, we know what Lamar can do. How do they keep Derrick Henry from becoming the focal point of this game?
Well, I think that this defense does some stuff really well. And Dan Orlovsky spoke on it last week on that Monday night game when he said that this is a defense that is a assignment-driven defense. The guys know where they're supposed to be and what they're doing. They keep everything in front of them, and they just fly and rally to the football. you've got to gang tackle this guy. You're not going to expect to get one guy to get him on the ground. You got to gang tackle Derrick Henry. So when I look at this game, this matchup on Sunday night, that's what I truly believe. I mean, this is going to be a group effort. And the thing that makes things a little different is Todd Monken, their offense coordinator in Baltimore. And I talked about this last night with Daniel Wilcox on our show, former Raven, Buccaneer, and Jet, when he talked about Monken finally getting comfortable in what he's doing. And now you look at that power aspect with Derrick Henry and this group up front, and then he turns around and goes 3 wideouts, and they run college stuff, or they're running mesh, quarterback read, and those types of things. So it's going to be a challenge for the Bills. But again, I think this is one of those deals where you play assignment football, you get downhill, and you rally to it. And this is a group that runs really well. If he does get out, I think they'll get him on the ground. I mean, I don't think there's many people out there that can outrun this defense. You just got to limit those explosive plays, and fight another down. So yes, it will be challenging, but I think the Bills, the way they're built on defense, they have the ability to at least control it, so to speak.
What's it like as an offensive lineman? I wanted to ask you, because you obviously blocked for a Hall of Famer and Thurman, right, but then later in your career, you blocked for Antoine Smith, who is definitely more of a Derrick Henry type than Thurman
right.
Thomas ever was. What's it like when you've got a 200 and Antoine probably went 225, 230.
Right.
What's it like when you've got that guy coming behind you as an offensive lineman?
Well, first things first, you better have your elbows tucked in, because when he's rolling, if he hit, those types of backs, they tend to batter you a little bit with helmets and things like that. But no, I mean, a guy like Antoine, I mean, he's going to bring his own block with him, so to speak. So as long as you get a piece of a guy, you don't necessarily have to get hands on him and run him 10 yards downfield. As long as you get a piece on him, Antoine is so quick downhill and so powerful. A lot of times he'll get through arm tackles, right? Thurman was probably the greatest zone runner I ever watched. His patience and his ability to let blocks set up was amazing, right? But totally two different styles of play. And, with a guy like Antoine, you just want to make sure you get a hat on a hat, cover guys up to where they can't square their pads up and get a clean shot on them. As long as they're reaching and going for arm tackles, they're probably going to run through it.
Very interesting. All right, so I got a couple of questions for you, but you mentioned how this defense is built, and I don't want to get too far away from the specifics of this matchup with Baltimore. Maybe, Jerry, you could phase some of that into your response, but I have kind of an organizational approach to this question. When you see them able to absorb the types of injuries they have, right, whether it be Taron Johnson, whether it be Terrell Bernard, whether it be the situation at safety heading into the season, what does that say to you about Sean McDermott, about the organization, about the depth they have, that they've been able to have the success they've had to this point now as they look to go 4-0 against Baltimore?
Right. I think it's a great question. And it's, the thing that we talk about a lot is I don't think Brandon Beane gets enough credit, especially a season like this year where the Bills come in under cap constraints, have to get rid of a lot of veteran players to get under the cap. And then he goes out and finds a guy like Casey Toohill, who is a tremendous special teams player, great depth at defensive end, plays the run really well, and can rush the passer. He goes in the draft and finds a guy like Dorian Williams, who I got to watch a bunch in college because Tulsa plays Tulane in the same conference, a guy that I was really high on watching him in college. They get him ready to play. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? And it just shows that McDermott is, there are no excuses with him. They get guys prepared, and he just has this ability to make things work. What he has, he will find a way to make it work. Now, I have heard inklings that they'd really do a lot of work with the backups during the week as far as one-on-one meetings with coaches and different things of trying to maybe, you only have so many reps in a practice, right? So guys can only be on the field so much, but they really do a lot of off-the-field work, looking at film, talking through scenarios and things like that. So that system that he has going, I mean, it works tremendously well. And then you look at this preseason, guys. Josh threw 3 passes? I mean, a lot of these guys didn't play at all. So all those guys that are having to play because of the injuries, they got a bunch of preseason time as well.
It's interesting you brought that up because Bobby Babich was actually talking about that the other day, about how they pour a lot into their backups. Right. And this is not a team that is going to run the first string all night, all day long in practice, and the other guys are just sitting there watching. They really do spend a lot of time. They give them reps during practice, and then all that film study and everything else. I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because he was just talking about that's why these guys have been able to plug right in and replace players who are basically Pro Bowl level guys, and we really haven't seen a drop off yet. It's pretty cool.
Right. I mean, Sal, it has a lot to do with veteran management, right? So it's funny, I'm going to say something and you might laugh, but the way McDermott does some things reminds me of Marv a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Marv was well ahead of his time in player management as far as health goes, physical health. Rusty Jones doing nutritional stuff all the way back in the 90s, right? Where nobody was, everybody thought you still wanted to eat a steak and a baked potato the night before the game. And Rusty was way ahead of that. Marv was always really good at getting his vets rest. And I think McDermott's the same way. Let's not wear the vets out. They know what they're doing. Let's get our backups in there and get them some experience so they understand, when their number's called. And we know in this world of NFL football, if you watch the game last night, there's players laying all over the field, and really good ones at that. Those backups are going to play sooner than later, so you better have them ready.
All right, let's talk about Lamar Jackson. We addressed Derrick Henry. We mentioned Lamar, but as Sal pointed out at the top of the show here, they have had success in dealing with him.
Right.
If you can, Jerry, to the extent you've watched those games, maybe take us inside of that. What's the formula for successful defense against Lamar Jackson? And there's also sort of the book on him, obviously an MVP pedigree, right? But
right.
The key is to get him to throw outside of the numbers if you can. Is that your take, and what approach has Buffalo taken, and what should they take on Sunday night?
I think so. You look at Leslie Frazier and how he used to play defense, Tampa 2, a lot of keep everybody in front of you. It seems that the Bills as of late, and obviously this is probably a McDermott trait, they're doing the same thing. Babich will dial up pressures and things like that, but they still like to play with their bodies behind everybody. They like to keep everything in front of them. And with Lamar, to me, the key to him is when he gets going early in the running game and he gets beat around a little bit, and he gets that feel and gets into the game, he plays a lot better. And I think if you can limit Lamar to where, okay, if he's throwing the ball 30 plus times a game, you've got a really good chance of winning. If he's throwing the ball anywhere from 23 to 28 times, they're probably doing what they want to do on offense. I think that's kind of where you got to look at it. So if you can limit him getting out of the pocket and being so productive. Now, again, watching all 22 and some of the film study, they are running they're running quite a few called plays for him. They will run zone reads like you'll see in the college game. They run a lot of quarterback counter, where they'll run counter and they'll add the running back as an extra blocker, get Lamar with the ball. So they are going and making a lot of predetermined call plays for him to run it. But if you can limit those, limit his scrambling ability, and get him to throw the ball 30 plus times, you've got a good chance of winning, I think.
Last week, he went through 15 times. I mean, they had 28 points early in the fourth quarter. They didn't even throw the ball at all against Dallas.
Right, exactly.
Hey, let me ask you about Mark Andrews. That guy has been so good for so long, and now they've moved likely kind of into that role, and Andrews has kind of slipped back a bit. Now I know he got hurt last year. I guess he was hurt in the preseason. Then he got in a car accident too, apparently. So he's still recovering.
Right.
But have you been a little surprised that Mark Andrews has been so de-emphasized so far?
No, I think that one of the things is Likely's really good.
Yeah.
Likely runs really, really well, and Likely probably falls more towards that category of a Dalton Kincaid type tight end than, say, a Pete Metzelaars, right? I mean, he's a guy that can run routes. He can do a lot of stuff on the edge. You can put him in the slot. You see some stuff where they'll line up 3 across the back where Lamar will be in shotgun. They'll have a tailback to one side. Likely will be on the other side. They really, really like to utilize his athleticism. Again, kind of that willingness of Monken to finally not be stubborn and say, you know what, we got a ton of athletes all over the field. Let's go ahead and utilize them. If we got to do some college type stuff, we will. And when I say college type stuff, I don't want anybody to think that I'm, disparaging that or like talking down to it. To me, it's one of the maddening things in this league right now is we got all these guys developing across the country. And the first thing we do is we bring them in the NFL game and stick them under center. It's like, you got to utilize these guys' traits and what they do well. But I think Andrews is at the point in his career. You look at the injury, Sal, and you look at the workload. It's like we know he's still a really good tight end. We know he can block. If we limit his reps, we limit his chances of possibly sustaining injury. So if we can get, 10 to 15 out of him a game that are really, really high quality, that's better than trying to squeeze 30 out of him and he breaks down. So I think that has a little to do with it. And then also the emergence of Likely.
All right, so let's switch. Let's go to the Buffalo offense here. Just your impressions. I mean, again, so much was made of moving on from Stephon Diggs, right? And I think we've seen flashes, but this past win, was probably the most impressive in the sense of how productive they could be with that sort of everyone eats mentality. I mean, they just made that a miserable night. I know Jacksonville was down defensively in the secondary, but I mean, there's a lot to defend against, and they seem to be kind of hitting their stride in evolving. What's your take? And you obviously have 17 at the middle of all that, Jerry. What's your take on where things stand offensively with Buffalo? How dangerous are they? How different are they from when they had a guy like Stephon Diggs?
It's, again, we start talking about, if you look at offensive football, you've got 65 plays a game, maybe 75 plays a game. And when you have a guy that is, demands the ball 30 times or however many times Stephon demanded it, then you've got these other guys that demand the football. All of a sudden, your play window shrinks quite a bit. And if you look at this Bills team right now, the distribution is amazing. We've had 2 games in a row now where I think we've had 9 different receivers catch a ball. Last week it was like 10 before the half. So obviously that distribution is of importance to Joe Brady. I think the biggest thing about this offense is a couple things. I think one is the offensive line's ability to dominate the line of scrimmage. And they dominate it in a different way than you would think. When you think dominant offensive line play, you think coming downhill, snatching guys, big double teams, just mauling dudes. This is a very athletic group. Reminds me more of the old Denver Broncos teams where they run that wide zone and they were so athletic and get out of their stances and run. This Bills group creates running lanes with movement. Then you have the emergence of Spencer Brown, who obviously is healthy finally from that back injury, and he's moving better than I've ever seen him, especially in the passing game. Another 35 pass sets without a pressure last week. So obviously there's that emergence of the offensive line. And I think the biggest piece of this, and people want to talk about motion, they want to talk about deception, they want to talk about all these different things. The quarterback has bought in. He is bought into not throwing the ball downfield into trouble. He is bought into taking what they give him and realizing if I do this 6 times, that 7th time when they bite, I might have the opportunity to take the top off of it. And I think that Josh has embraced it, and that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. As an offensive lineman, did you raise an eyebrow back in March when they decided to move on from Mitch Morse? I mean, yeah, it was a salary cap move. We understand that. But coming off the season they had on the offensive line, which really, by all accounts, was very good. They were a cohesive unit that all 5 guys played every game, which is amazing today in the NFL. Did it surprise you that they basically upset 2 positions by moving on from Mitch Morse after a season they just had? What was your take on that?
Well, I think that the number one thing was McGovern, right? And, you look at that center, especially in that offense, there's so much put upon him. Being a Penn State guy, knew a lot about McGovern. Coming out of high school, he was the number 1 rated center in the country before Penn State signed him. And obviously he bounced around from guard, center. Cowboys had him mostly at guard. So there was that aspect of it. It's because Mitch brought so much leadership to that group. And, people think that, oh, it's easy. That all you do is snap the ball. Well, it's not. I mean, the snap for every center, the snap comes out differently. If a center reaches to the left, the hand might drag to the right some, so the snaps might come out a little bit right. There's still these intricacies as far as taking a snap. So that was one thing. The spot I was more worried about was probably the left guard spot. I was a little bit worried about David Edwards, to be honest with you. Are you weakening that line by moving McGovern, or do you leave McGovern and bring another guy in to play center? Obviously, it seems now that the plan all along was for McGovern to eventually take over for Mitch Morse, which again is another Brandon Beane move that was a good one. I think McGovern reminds me more of a Kent Hull type of center, long, gets out of his stance, can run second level, really, I mean, exceptional second level center. So obviously he's doing well, but again, it was that Edwards aspect, and he's holding his own. The more games he plays, the more comfortable he's getting. He still has an issue here and there, but we all did. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that they were able to get Edwards, a guy they got on the cheap from the Rams, and now he's productive at that spot, and that's a win for the Bills.
All right, so let's kind of, in the time we have left here, look toward that aspect of the matchup on Sunday night when you're talking about, and Sal pointed this out in his pregame article as well. I mean, Baltimore, that defensively successful against the run, they would seem through 3 games vulnerable against the pass. How does Joe Brady look at that and attack on Sunday night?
Well, it's funny. They are number 1 against the run, but is that because that they're not very good at the pass? And so everybody's trying to pass the football. They run this really weird hybrid 3-4 defense. They will get up where it looks like they're in a 4-man front, and kind of the key to this group is Van Noy. So they got Van Noy listed as an outside linebacker. He does have time as a defensive end in the league. He's always been kind of a tweener. So they're able to play a 4-man front with 2 outside guys standing up. So it's kind of weird. I think it's, what you're going to see on Sunday night, Bills, when they're in true blue passing downs, 3rd and 6 or more, they like to get in their 3-man look, and they'll run a ton of stunts, including with Patrick Queen and those linebackers. They're going to do a lot of different twists and stunts up front. When it's a more of a running type thing, or they could get both, that's when they like to be in their 4-man front. So they're exceptional up front. They run really, really well. It's kind of like the Bills. They run well. They're aggressive. And I think the guy that doesn't get enough credit in that defense is Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame. I mean, he's a hammer. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He runs exceptionally well. And while they don't play that nickel look, he's almost like another linebacker. Does a tremendous job back there. And then you look coverage-wise, they play a lot of man underneath, help over the top. And, Hamilton being so long, roams the backfield as well as the other safety. So it's going to be a tall task. I think what you have to do against speed defenses and highly aggressive defenses like Baltimore is you got to continue to do what you're doing, right? You got to give them deception. You got to give them movement. You got to give them a lot of counters and things like that to get them moving. When you get speed moving and guessing, that's when they have issues. And I think you'll see Brady continue on what he's been doing the first 3 games and probably have some wrinkles to that as well.
Hamilton's the best safety in football.
I agree
He's
with that.
just an unbelievable player. So that's going to be an issue for them. I think, do you think, because they really have not thrown the ball downfield, Jerry, they have, and it's been nice because Josh is not getting bored with the checkdowns, right? He's understanding the importance of all that now. But do you think this is a game where they might want to challenge those 2 outside corners and maybe take the ball downfield? Or do you just keep, checking it down, getting James Cook involved and using Shakir? I don't know. I mean, it feels like a game where if they could pull Hamilton away to one side, they could attack the other side downfield. What's your take on that?
So I think the key to that's going to be how they run the football. I think Baltimore's going to line up with minimal guys in the box, and they're going to try to stop the run with minimal guys inside, which allows them to play Hamilton in that deep third or deep half or deep third, whatever, and be that roamer to help over the top. If the Bills can get some sort of running game going, that's going to make Baltimore have to respect that and get down inside. And now some of this man-to-man stuff on the outside has a chance to win, and you can get over the top. So I think, I don't know last time we ever talked about this, because it seems like with Dorsey, it was grab plays and see which play works. I think with Brady, it's so conceptual and how it all fits together. And I really do believe that there's a lot of stuff run-wise that needs to hit for these Bills wide receivers to get downfield. Now, that being said, one thing I have been impressed with Brady, with these guys playing over the top and taking receivers away, he does an exceptional job of getting the running backs in the passing game. And if we can get Cook to make sure he catches all the balls he should catch, he should have another big game out of the backfield as well.
All right, Jerry, great insight. Thank you so much. I'm going to have you on from time to time here on Believe in Bills. Great to get that kind of, inside the scheme perspective from you and all of your experience. Tell us a little bit about, we mentioned you're on the media side now,
Right.
and you are affiliated with the Believe Network. Tell us about what you're doing and how folks can see and hear what you're having to say.
Right. So myself and John Fina, who everybody I'm sure knows, and by the way, Fina should be the legend of the game every game if they're going to play that way. And a friend of ours, Joe Miller, we started a content creation group called Overreaction Buffalo, and we are powered by Believe, and we've got shows Monday, Tuesday, just all 5 days of the week, plus a post-game show after the game whenever they do play, whether it's Sunday, Saturday, Monday night, Thursday. We have had some late nights as of recently because the Bills have been on some wild primetime stuff as of late. So you can catch us on YouTube. You can also, we have a website, overreactionbuffalo.com, where you can go to and see all the up-to-date news on the Bills, and then also all of our content. And then you can catch us on all streaming platforms as well as far as podcasts go. And if you're a Discord junkie, we do have a Discord page as well. And so we've got quite a bit going on, and it's been a good time. It's been awesome to be partnered with Believe, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, Adam, you're actually working, Jerry. He in his semi-retirement doesn't do anything.
Right.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's as a person. Here's the deal. We all have our things we like to do, right? I play a lot of golf, but it's like, talking about things and conversing with people and all that stuff makes me happy. So, you know what, it seems like, some people would say it's a lot of work, but it's actually enjoyable for me. So I enjoy, not only meeting people when I go up to Buffalo and talking on Twitter and all that, but also been able to talk about the Bills weekly. So it's been
what I used to love about you when I was in the locker room with you, because you learned from Ken Hull, right? He was the master of not only playing the position, but how to handle the media. Yes. And you were always a guy that we could go up and approach and ask about things. But then there were days when you were like, get the hell away from my locker. I got nothing to say. But I love that because today these guys are just so vanilla with everything they do.
Right.
And you were one of those guys that were like, he's going to be a great quote, but there's going to be a time where you're going to go over there and he's going to say, he's going to swat you and get the hell out of here.
Well, I imagine it was probably close to that whole Flutie Johnson ordeal, because by the middle of that, I was done with everything.
We could do 5 episodes on that alone. That would be longer than this one.
Right.
And it was so funny because they had that tiny little locker room when they first built that. You guys were jammed in there like sardines, and there was so much media on that Flutie Johnson thing, and I know it was pissing off players every day.
And they were, and unfortunately, they were right next to us, so that's where the crowd was at all times.
There were days. There were days with Jerry. I remember this, and maybe Jerry, you do too, where I would, kind of hover around his locker, and it wouldn't even be you would just kind of look at me. You'd look back and be like, I could tell by the expression on his face, Sal. It was either do an interview with him day or not. Yeah. And a lot of those days, he'd just kind of let it like, okay.
Well,
Jerry was real as they came. That was beautiful.
I apologized to a few people over the years.
It's funny how many relationships we have after you guys retire. Everything is fine after you guys retire.
Now, what?
It's just like Vic Carucci. I mean, I saw Vic at Jim Kelly's golf tournament, and we're talking. I'm like, who'd ever thought that this guy was a great friend of mine? And at one point, he wrote an article that, when you wake up in the morning and open the Tulsa or the Buffalo News, and all 5 of your pictures are sitting on the front page, that's usually not very good.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's funny, because there's a natural tension between the media and active players, especially with mixed results, right? But I think after the fact, I think everyone realized their job, and I really am moved by the respect that exists after the fact, and I think it's great to be able to work on projects like this. So Jerry, it's phenomenal to see you again, and looking forward to having you on.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It's been awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. So for Sal Mayoran, a Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, Jerry Ostroski, Overreaction Buffalo, powered by Believe. I am Adam Benini, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live every Monday night at 7 o'clock on Channel 2. Thanks for being with us on Believe in Bills.